The British didn't just steal 45 trillion from India. They stole something worth infinitely more. They stole the Indian mind. And that theft is still paying dividends 78 years after they left. 1947. The British packed their bags and left India. We celebrated Independence Day. Freedom. We thought we won. But here's what actually happened. They left behind the greatest heist in human history. Not gold, not diamonds, something way more valuable. They left behind millions of Indians who would think like the British, value what the British valued, and seek approval from the West for the rest of their lives. They lost the country but kept the minds. And those minds would raise children. And those children would raise more children, all carrying the same virus. That virus is still spreading right now inside you. The real conquest of the British didn't just happen on battlefields. It happened in classrooms, in homes, in the Indian mind. Because the British understood something crucial. You can't rule millions of people just with guns and soldiers. That's expensive. That's unstable. But if you can make those 300 million people believe they are inferior, if you can make them want to serve you, if you can program them to hate themselves and worship you, then you don't just need soldiers. They'll colonize themselves. And that's exactly what the British did. Systematically, brilliantly, and permanently. February 2nd, 1835. British Parliament. A man named Thomas Babington Macaulay stands up and delivers a speech that would rewire the Indian brain for the next 200 years. He said, "We must at present do our best to form a class who may be interpreters between us and the millions whom we govern. A class of persons, Indian in blood and color, but English in taste, in opinions, in morals, and in intellect." Hear that again. This wasn't an accident. This was the blueprint, the manual, the strategy. Create Indians who look Indian but think like the British, who hate their own culture and worship British culture, who will do the work of ruling India so the British don't have to. Macaulay's plans wasn't just about education. It was about psychological warfare, mental colonization, breaking the Indian spirit from the inside. And you know what? It worked better than he could have imagined. Step 1. Destroy the education system. Before the British came, India had gurukuls, ancient universities like Nalanda and Takshashila that were famous across Asia. Students came from China, Tibet, Persia to study here. Indian students learned medicine, astronomy, mathematics, philosophy, metallurgy. They learned to think, to debate, to question, to discover. India was producing scholars while most of Europe couldn't even read. Then the British arrived and they looked at this education system and realized this is dangerous. Free-thinking Indians are a threat. So they destroyed it deliberately. They replaced the entire system with something else. Something designed to produce clerks, workers, obedient servants. By 1835, Macaulay's system was implemented. British-style schools opened across India. And the message was clear. Traditional Indian education is worthless. British education is superior. Sanskrit, dead language. Ayurveda, superstition. Indian mathematics, primitive. Indian philosophy, mythical nonsense. The only valuable knowledge was the British knowledge. And the only acceptable language was English. The only respectable degree was a British degree. Within 2 generations, Indians forgot they had universities when Britain was illiterate. They forgot they taught the world mathematics. They forgot they were intellectual giants. The British made India forget its own greatness. Step 2. Make English the language of power. Here's the genius move. They didn't ban Indian languages. That would cause rebellion. Instead, they made English the only language that mattered. Want a government job? English required. Want to be a lawyer, doctor, administrator? English only. Want respect in the society? Better speak English. Your mother tongue? That's for servants. For the uneducated, for the lower class. Suddenly millions of Indians were desperate to learn English not because they loved the language, but because they couldn't survive without it. But here's what happens when you force people to think in another language. They start absorbing that culture's values, that culture's worldview, that culture's sense of superiority. English didn't just become a tool. It became a status symbol, a marker of intelligence, a measure of worth. Even today, an Indian speaking fluent English is seen as smarter than an Indian speaking fluent Kannada or Bengali or Marathi. That's not natural. That's programming from 1835. Step 3. Erase Indian history, replace it with British glory. The British rewrote Indian textbooks completely. Out went the stories of Indian mathematicians like Aryabhatta and Brahmagupta who invented zero and developed calculus concepts. In came British mathematicians. Out went Indian doctors like Sushruta who performed plastic surgery much before the British. In came British medical pioneers. Out went Indian kings and empires and achievements. In came British colonial history. British wars, British heroes, Indian children started learning that civilization came to India with the British. Before the British, India was backward, poor, chaotic. They weren't taught that India had 25% of global GDP before the British rule. They weren't taught that the British systematically deindustrialized India, destroyed textile industries, caused famines that killed millions. They were taught that the British civilized India, built railways, built schools, brought order. The truth is that they built railways for stealing resources, schools for creating servants, brought order by massacring anyone who resisted. Indian freedom fighters were called rebels and criminals in textbooks. British colonizers were called administrators and reformers. Within 3 generations, Indians started believing their own civilization was inferior, that they needed the British to become civilized. That's not education. That's brainwashing at scale. Step 4. Create a racial hierarchy. The British didn't just rule India economically, they ruled psychologically by creating a racial caste system. At the top, white British, superior in every way, intelligent, civilized, beautiful, trustworthy. At the bottom, brown Indians, inferior in every way, primitive, uncivilized, ugly, untrustworthy. This wasn't subtle. There were clubs Indians couldn't enter, restaurants Indians couldn't eat at, parks with signs saying Indians and dogs are not allowed. The British would sit in first-class train compartments while Indians in their own country sat in third class. British people had bungalows, Indians had huts, and the message was hammered in every single day. White skin means superior, brown skin means inferior. This wasn't just about discrimination. This was psychological programming. Generation after generation of Indians absorbed this message. We are less than them. That's why fairness creams became a multi-billion-dollar industry. That's why Indian parents still tell kids, don't play in the sun, you'll get dark. That's why Indians feel insecure around white people 78 years after independence. The British created a mental hierarchy that Indians are still enforcing on themselves. Step 5. Make collaboration look like success. The British were smart. They didn't just oppress Indians. They rewarded Indians who served them. Indians who adopted British customs got better jobs. Indians who spoke English fluently got promotions. Indians who abandoned their culture got respect. So Indians started competing to be more British, started abandoning traditional clothes for Western fashion, started eating with forks and knives instead of hands, started celebrating British holidays. The British created a system where the more you rejected your own culture, the more successful you became. And this system didn't end in 1947. It's still running. Right now. Today, Indian parents want their kids to go abroad, settle in America, get a job in London. Why? Because somewhere deep down we still believe success means getting closer to the West. Today, Indian professionals adopt American accents and American business jargon. Why? Because somewhere deep down we still believe sounding Western makes us more credible. Today, Indian brands need Western validation before Indians trust them. Why? Because somewhere deep down we still believe foreign means better. The British government left, but British ideology is still ruling Indian minds. The British Empire didn't end in 1947. It just went invisible. They don't govern our laws anymore, but they govern our thoughts. They don't control our economy anymore, but they control what we value. They don't rule our land anymore, but they rule our psychology. Every time an Indian seeks Western validation, the empire wins. Every time an Indian feels inferior around a white person, the empire wins. Every time an Indian trusts Western sources more than Indian sources, the empire wins. Macaulay's plan from 1835 is still working perfectly. We are still that class of persons, Indian in blood and color, but English in taste, opinions, and intellect. We got political freedom, but we never got mental freedom. So, how do you break 200 years of programming? First, see it. Recognize that these thoughts aren't yours. That voice saying foreign is better isn't your voice. It's an installed voice, a colonial voice. Second, learn your real history, not British textbooks, not colonial narratives. The actual history of what India was before they came and what they did while they were here. Third, stop performing for Western approval. Stop code switching. Stop seeking validation from people who colonized you. Your worth isn't determined by their opinion. Fourth, rebuild from within. Speak your languages proudly. Wear your clothes without shame. Practice your traditions. Trust your own judgment. The British physically left 78 years ago. It's time to kick them out of your head too. Thomas Macaulay died in 1859, but his ideology is still alive, living inside millions of Indians who don't even know it's there. Every time you feel that automatic respect for Western accent, every time you trust a white person's opinion more than Indians, every time you feel shame about your own culture, that's Macaulay's ghost. Still ruling, still winning. But here's what they didn't count on. Eventually, some Indians would wake up, would see that programming, would refuse to carry it forward. You don't need their validation. You never did. That was the lie. The big lie that 200 years of colonization was built on. Our civilization is more than 5,000 years old. Our languages are ancient and complex. Our philosophies shaped religions. Our sciences advanced humanity. You are not inferior. You were just taught to believe you are. And what was taught can be untaught. This is Ankush Bogimane. Do subscribe if you liked it.